Hey there, I'm Kevin Downey, and I run an agency called Kevin M. Downey, where we help B2B companies with their sales and marketing efforts. You can visit our website at kevinmdowney.com. Okay, today's topic, why you need to run every single sales and business development candidate through a psychometric assessment. So if you have any knowledge or experience of assessments, there's a handful that are psychometric assessments that are EEOC compliant, that are just outstanding products and dead on accurate, and we use traits. There are some other good ones. I talk about those in some other videos, but we use traits, which is a phenomenal product I'm going to show to you in a second. And I'm a big believer in running assessment on every candidate for every position, right? Because you have to build the model of the job, and it's basically a dot pattern, and I'll show it to you. And if they don't line up on the dots, then they're not built for the job, right? In B2B companies, though, with sales reps that need to do their own prospecting or business development reps who are dedicated to doing prospecting, it is absolutely imperative that you utilize the psychometric assessment. And we do, obviously, for our recruiting, for all of our client programs. But it's necessary because the job is so hard. It is a very difficult, repetitive job with a lot of non-engagement, a lot of voicemail, a lot of email, same thing over and over again. Sometimes if you're in a tough field, target audience is tough, you might only talk to 4 or 5 decision makers in a day, sometimes even less. I would say for our clients, average is 10 to 15, a good day is 20. But it's a lot of repetition without a lot of engagement, relatively speaking. And the other problem you run into is when you're doing business development reps in particular, even when they generate a lead, then they have no relationship with that going forward. So they do the thing, they get done, and then they hand it off to sales, right? So it's not the satisfaction of working with a client in the long term like sales gets isn't there. So it is a tough job. You need someone who is wired for it. So let me show you the assessment product really quick. This is traits. This is what we use. You can see the orange dot pattern is, in this case, a BDR role. If we were looking at what we call hybrid sales, which is effectively, if you think of a sales representative or a sales executive, account manager, that is going to build a customer base, and then they're going to work with that customer base for the life cycle of the customer. So they're doing upselling, cross-selling, they're filling in inventory, they're working with that customer, on a regular basis. And so they're building a customer base, right? That wiring pattern is a little bit different than this because of what is involved in taking care of the customer and the sales side of it. But there are certain similarities here. At the end of the day, if they've got to do prospecting, whether they're doing sales and ultimately just doing prospecting for a period of time and it goes down over time, but it's a necessary component on the front end of the job, or it's a full-time BDR, they got to line up on the dots. If they don't line up on the dots, it's a waste of time. Resume is not even worth looking at. The qualifier is the assessment result. And for ours, only 15% line up on the dots in what we would call a strong or a good fashion for hybrid sales, so sales that needs to do their own prospecting, or full-time business development. It's a really hard job to have the wiring pattern for, and they got to fit it. If they don't fit it, they're not going to work out. We've seen it. We've seen the data prove it over and over and over again. Because they get exhausted because they're not built for it. They don't want to do it. Sometimes they'll do it for a short period of time because they've got good intestinal fortitude, because they're driven, because they have a level of obligation, if you want to call it that, in the psychology of certain employees. But at the end of the day, if they're not built for it, they're going to get exhausted by it because it doesn't fit their personality, their traits. So you got to run them through a psychometric assessment, okay? If you have any questions on recruiting, you need some help recruiting sales or business development reps for your company, reach out to us, kevinmdowney.com. Thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.